Suba Udasanak Veva, Vanakam, good morning. It's such a pleasure for me to see you, Reverend Sirs, Dr. Deepika Udugama. It's such a pleasure to see you after some time. Learned members of the Committee of the Human Rights, guests who have been invited because of your special interest in women and children and against where violence is being perpetrated. I want to start with bad news. I promise you it is not about the coronavirus. I think in a way it is worse. Yeah, last night I finished work. I do a lot of things now, so when people say retired, I'm kind of thinking, I really need to be retired because I'm kind of doing so much of international work right now. And one of the things, I finished work very late and switched on, it was about 2:30 in the morning, and I switched on the television. And then I saw the UN report where they analyzed bias such as politics, education, reproductive rights and integrity. A new report has found at least 90% of men and women hold some sort of bias against females. I just returned from a conference where in certain countries like Madagascar, there are 75% women in the judiciary. And yet, it was a very high-powered conference because it was the launching of the Global Judicial Integrity Network. We had 45 Chief Justices and 600 attendees of judges. They were all, most of them were men. And I looked at it and I thought, okay, maybe we are getting the statistics right. But isn't it all about the power dynamics? I have been studying cyber technology. I was one of the first judges to begin playing with the computer in 1985 when it first came out. And I was fascinated because I knew it was the future. And I went to, 1 year ago, I finished my fellowship on education, judicial education, with artificial intelligence. And there we did cybersecurity. So it was something that I realized the terrible harm that is being perpetrated. So I hope I have a lot of slides. I may not be able to go through it all. But I want to start by saying, as a judge, and I'll switch to Sinhalese for this, වැදගත්ම දේ මම හිතන්නේ නීතියේ පදනම වෙන්නේ සමානාත්මතාවය. නමුත් අද මම ඔබලා දිහා බලනකොට මට පේනවා විශාල there's a large number of women police officers. And there are two things we guarantee under the law. One is equality before the law. The second is equal protection of the law. You look at those women police officers, they have qualified equally, they are doing the same task as the men, but their salaries are lower. Correct? Right? Your salaries are lower. Hari neda? Padiya adui. And they are before the Court of Appeal and Supreme Court trying so hard to get it. Now, that is not equality, is it? I don't have to talk too much about it, because if it happened to you, you will feel that sense of disempowerment. And that is what equality is all about. So when I begin talking about cyber technology, and it's so important for both the men and the women in the audience today to try to understand the difficulty. First, I will go to the difficulty that we have with violence where the cyber or internet communications are concerned. So the backdrop of a crime would be what? The backdrop of crime is the internet. Everybody has touched or opened an internet. Everybody has a smartphone with them. Okay. Now, while it has lots of good users, the information is open and available to everybody. Every pedophile, every pervert, every wicked person who does not have any morals in it has access to this internet. And so do your children. So do the young girls, those most vulnerable people. There is no state sovereignty. You don't say this is the internet for Sri Lanka. There is nothing called state sovereignty. When you come to a court, there is jurisdiction, right? I think the police officers understand it. There is a jurisdiction, but there is no state sovereignty. Cyberspace is independent, anarchic, and ungovernable. Next time you get something that is really nasty about you on the internet, you will open it and think, why can't this be controlled? Why are the police not doing anything? You know, we play the blame game, and of course it always seems to end with the police, but we all have to take responsibility. It is everywhere and it is nowhere. Any person can express himself or herself. And it has unique characteristics. It is invisible to the untrained eye. It may need to be interpreted by a specialist. The evidence on the internet, say somebody bullies you, somebody says something very bad about you, that part of that evidence is highly volatile. It changes. It may be altered or destroyed through normal use. It may be copied without limits. So somebody takes a picture of you when you were a young girl in a cute little, panty and playing in the water, and posts it to all the people, head of who are handling your recruitment as a judge, as a senior lawyer, at the time you go for it. So it can be repeated. It is never erased. And there is something, when all these corruption cases took place, when all the corruption cases took place, I was thinking, they're going to be using computers. And I just checked and asked them, where are these computers' hard disks kept? And I was told they took the information and they stacked it up. Now you do know cases take a long time before you can come to courts. So if a woman is now abused on the internet or anything, it takes a long time for this to come to court. So when you take these, there would be evidence. Why? Because they carry the pictures, they have been used, there would be a lot of material inside that. If you just keep it lying somewhere, the material gets what we call in law corrupted. Why? Because it has to be protected in a certain way. And there is a thing called a neodymium magnet. And with this, you can erase a credit card, you can erase tapes, and therefore you can erase material on those tapes. I'm not giving any ideas to those who are having crimes where computers are involved, but protection of that is important. It shows we know very little. We who are in the field of law and order know very little about this. We are not taking the basic minimum precautions. Now in this we talk of gender equality. Today, gender equality has a much wider meaning than it did when we started. It is about the equal rights, responsibilities and opportunities of women and men and girls and boys. Equality does not mean that women and men will become the same. They're not the same. But that women's and men's rights, responsibilities and opportunities will depend on whether they are born male or female. It will not depend. Just because you're a male or a female, your rights, your responsibilities and opportunities will be no difference. So gender equality implies that the interests, needs and priorities of both men and women are taken into consideration, recognizing the diversity of different groups of women and men. Gender equality is not a woman's issue, but should concern and fully engage men as well as women. I really wish I could look into your hearts and minds and ask the men who came here today, how many of you thought, they're going to a women's thing. What can we really learn from it? This is about women. Be careful. Today there are more boys being sexually abused online, your sons, as much as your daughters. Grandmothers are being raped, videoed, doing the most terrible, demeaning ways, multiple rapes. The video is taken and put on the pornography website, and they're earning money. Now, I went to Jaffna to do a workshop with my judges, and that was what they told me. They said, "Madam, we can't even tell you we are social." My judges. And they said, "Do you know, madam, in the north," and I heard it in the south, I heard it in the east. We haven't gone to our completed our workshops in Kerala, but I'm hearing it all over. That children today, at a very young age, are watching pornography. It is perverting their minds, and we are not even teaching them the basic important things about sex. In my time, when I was very young, and Deepika, you remember, Dr. Deepika, when we were talking about child rights, we were talking of how can we teach children? How can we teach children about sex? Very easy. Little children of 2 and 3, we kept a dead flower, we kept a live flower. And we said, now do you see, if all flowers died, then there'd be nothing. We'll die. There'll be no bees, there'll be no birds, and everything will get dark. So we have to have new flowers. And we told them who fly. They say, oh, the bees and the butterflies, they go and they make new flowers. I said, yes. And then we cut a flower in two, and we said, this is the petals that attracts the butterflies. This is the stamen. This is the pollen. And we explained it. Then we took a picture of a boy's private part and a girl's private part. And we asked the children, what are these? Oh, that is chichi, pippi. You know, they don't use the words that police officers record when they record a rape or incest of a young child. They don't use those words. He put his penis into her vagina. Mr. Vijay Singh, one of the crack investigators of children's matters. I'm glad you're being used now by the Children Protection Authority. You were there for many years. What happens? The child doesn't know what these words are. So the child says, I don't understand, and gets into the witness box. The defense stands up, 2 questions. Do you know what a penis is? The child looks up. Contradiction. The police fabricated the case. And out goes the case from the court. And yet we have given lessons to the police officers. Tell the children. So we tell this to the children. This is your private part. Nobody can touch that private part. Not even your parents. Your parents must ask your permission before they touch it. And if anybody touches that private part, you have to do 3 things. Shout no. Stamp your leg and shout no as loud as you can. Then go from that place. And next, tell somebody. So these, can't you go to every school and teach them this? With all the work I had, I covered 172 schools. And after we did this teaching, Dr. Deepika, we had cases coming out. There was always child abuse. It was a hidden, dark secret, incest in the family. Today, every day in the newspaper, not that people are watching more, people are having more child abuse. It is coming out into the open. We have courts that are more sensitive. So people can come. We have what is called vulnerable witness programs for judges and lawyers and police officers. And the women police officers here, if you're working in the women and children's desk, you would have gone through those programs, correct? You would go through the Kanta police නිලධාරීන් මේ ළමා අපයෝජනීය සම්බන්ධව Tamanta දැනුම ලබලා දීලා තියෙනව නේද? ඔව්ද නැද්ද? හැමෝටම? Well, maybe there are others who don't have that training. So, but we have, I know that on the statistics we are told all the women have had the training, right? So, now, on top of all the problems we have the internet. Now, the internet came from 1982 to 2004. If you have children, this is important. Your child will be called a millennial. From 2002 and 2004, they belong to the Gen Z, meaning they were born with an electronic in their hand. They know nothing else. You know how smart little kids are? 2 minutes they have Googled something before you can even pick out your phone. Because they were born with it. But there's a big problem in their lives. They do not know anything but the smartphone. So everything they do not know how to communicate. So they look at the smartphone and they talk through, not Facebook. Facebook is now very old-fashioned. So if you're doing Facebook, you're really older than the millennials because nobody uses Facebook. It is Snapchat. And some of the things that on Snapchat, one of the things that they had was the blue whale, which was a mind control game. So in a mind control, they control the mind of little children. Second, what they do is they take pornographic material. So when the child is searching playpen or games, a pornography video with children comes up. So what it does, when the child is, never give your child. Now you know Steve Jobs. Who is Steve Jobs? Steve Jobs is the person who invented the smartphone. He was a high-tech person who controlled everything. He has a daughter. The daughter, for 2 hours, can watch her laptop seated in the dining room. You put your child into that bedroom and lock the door. You're exposing that child to the worst problems. And the worst thing is, we don't talk about it. We are not educating our children. In Malaysia, in Victoria, I have personally taken part in programs where they say we need to train our children on what is good and what is bad in sexual matters in a child-appropriate language, but as they grow up in a more explicit and important language. Because if not, what happened here would happen to them also. I need a sound stick here. So this is a thing called the 13 Reasons Why. Alarmingly, CNN reports that after the premiere of 13 Reasons Why, the search team found how to commit suicide on the internet rose up by 26%. This is what your children are watching. And it's how to commit suicide. And I don't know whether this is going to work, but let me try it. Okay? No, it's not working. That's okay. It's the story about a child who was raped and abused in university, right? Who was raped. This is what your children are watching. Mind games, blue whale, and this whole control, because they have nobody. They have only this. Their friends are on the Snapchat. They do not know whom they are talking to. They may be talking to a pedophile who can intervene, or they may be talking to some person who is waiting. First questions they ask is, who are your parents? How much are they earning? Where are you living? What is the location? So these are things that studies have shown. How, any problem? No? Yeah, right. These are things where studies have been shown that, and they're also told about the YOLO lifestyle. Anybody knows what YOLO is? Don't you know? You see how much we are ignorant about it. The children are told, oh, you live only once lifestyle. So, this young film boy who was a great singer, Inky, got hooked onto the message. And they say, you do everything because you're not going to live again. And when they say, so one of the mind control games is, go and stand at the end of the bridge and look down. And they, when you get scared, it is very similar to getting, like taking drugs. You get that fear and it's very exciting. Then they tell them, okay, now watch horror movies from 2 in the morning till 6 in the morning. And the worst horror movies. Don't talk to your parents. And you suddenly find, why is my child not talking? It is the mind controls that is. And this was I gave you an example of a young boy who got drunk. And the last tweet he said was, drunk AF, you can understand what the F stands for, going 120 miles an hour, drifting corners. YOLO, you live only once. So what happened? That boy died. Several children, you speak to the pediatricians. All over the world, children are committing suicide. They are being mind controlled. We never talk about it. We never have programs on the television about it. We don't teach parents what this is all about. Then, trolling. Now this young lady was found 16 years, found dead in a home in Hudson, Florida on Sunday night after using certain social networks like Snapchat. They got together and told her she was fat. You are a slut. Now you may think, why are the children listening to this? You go home and look at your little daughter, how particular she is as to how she looks, what she wears, and the little boy, they are preoccupied. Do I know the latest song? Do I know the latest in thing? They are controlled by this. And whatever ideas that come on, that they just take it. Then also, sometimes abuse goes offline. One of the reporters was hammered, and you can see the picture of her face. Recently, a female senator in Mexico was beaten in the streets of Mexico. Sorry, she was a senator. And after posting images of her injuries online, became the subject of a vicious harassment campaign on Twitter using this hashtag saying, beating women is happiness. Is that what you want your child to learn? But this is the mind control and things that are going. I want to tell you about something new thing that is, and it's about pedophilia. I really don't have time to tell you the terrible problems that are happening throughout the world because of pedophilia. What is pedophilia? Pedophilia is older men who like to have sex with children who are very, very young. Some as young as 3 and 4. So there was you can read about this on the thing called Operation Koala, what happened in Australia. You see, all over the world, there are people who have surveillances now because of all the horrible things that are happening to children on the web. And they suddenly saw, they found people were getting together to see something because they were following the track. You know, you can follow the, what you call the coordinates. You can geo-tag, I'm using words. It means you can find the geographical location. So they knew something was going to happen, and suddenly live streaming. Have you heard of it? Live streaming is they are actually sexually abusing a young girl of 12 and another young girl of 8, and it is happening in real time. And people pay to come into it. So what happened was, fortunately, the Australian police listened and they thought it was the Flemish language. They controlled Amsterdam. They said, no, this is not Flemish. Try Belgium. Belgium said, no, this is Ukraine language. And because of the mutual legal understandings on this topic, because of the, when it's pornography, there is civil liberties. When it's child pornography, it is illegal content. So what happened was, they contacted these people, and then they were able, using the coordinates, because one of the problems in internet is, you can find the instrument, but you can't find the person who is there, because if the person runs away, you can only trace the instrument. So this person was caught, and he was abusing his daughter, who was 12 years, and the next daughter, who was 8, who was a girl who was mentally challenged girl. Right? And this is on lifetime, real-time television. So technology-related violence against women, we call it tech-related VAW, encompasses acts of gender-based violence and are committed, abetted, or aggravated in part or fully by the use of information and communication technologies. Information technology, a wonderful thing. We make a lot of use of internet technology, medicine, and you'll find now coronavirus, they're asking the robots to work on them, and they are doing great jobs. But it is also a terrible, terrible, terrible way in abusing men, women, and children. So there is online harassment, cyber stalking, trolling, doxing, name calling, privacy invasions with threats of blackmail, viral rape videos, the distribution of sex videos that force survivors to relive the trauma of sexual assault every time it is repeated. Do you remember the young girl Vidya? Do you remember Vidya? Can you remember Vidya's rape? How she was tied to the trees, spread eagle, and multiply raped? All she could do was shake her head. I had to, for purpose of study, I had to go through those photographs. And why was it being done? It was the videoing by that German person, because this is big money. In the internet, they are sold through cryptocurrency. They go through what is into the dark web. Now, I hope I have enough time. Deepika, how much time do I have left? No. 10 minutes. Okay, I'll come to it. I'll try to cover that. Okay. So, there is technical transformative nature of cyber violence, direct personal attacks to personally target the victim, levels of personal grudge, lots of your sons and daughters. You know, little children today, 7 and 8, they have little boyfriends. If not, you're a loser. You're left out. You're not with it. So they have little boyfriends, and what happens? They hug each other and take a picture or something. Now sometimes the boys and the girls, and I know this because we have lots of cases of boys of 14 raping girls under 12. 250 cases accumulated. You know what the minimum sentence is? 7 years. Can any judge look at a boy of 14 and give him 7 years? So they simply refused to sentence. So all the cases were collecting, but that's another story. But to tell you that this is what is going on. The children have become so sexual. 1, lack of supervision. 2, nobody's teaching them anything else. There is nothing on this, so many channels of media showing so many different things. How to cook, how to protect yourself as a child. I very rarely see that happening. So children are called whores. Most children who come to courts in the magistrate's court, their phones have pornography on it. And what is scary? Child pornography. Because it is what you call grooming them, preparing them. You would have heard of that word called grooming. They are preparing that child because they know who the child is. How do they know who the child is? You have to switch on location on your phone before you can Snapchat, which means everybody on the net surveying this child knows where the child is, knows who the parents are. Another thing that happens is brothers and sisters. A brother will be told by his friends in the boys' school, now you better get this picture and come. If not, you're a loser. You're not with us. You're not in our gang. So what happens? Sister doesn't know. He's taking pictures and he gives it to his friends. That goes round and round, and suddenly this little girl, the parents are told, email goes, look at such and such a website. The child is on a porn website. And then they come rushing to these lady, Darshini, is she here today? No, she's not. Okay. She's the head of the cyber unit. Would be very interesting to have had her here. So I'm going to, you know what cyberbullying is, cyber stalking, cyber harassment. I wish I could do this. Hate speech. How many times have you heard hate speech? Ethnic violence. The hate speech. You know what we talk about? Multi-ethnic. We are not just one religion. We are multi-religious. And all our religions say, be compassionate, love, and be kind. Be helpful. Be protective. None of our cultures or our religions say harm. There is no other. All the great leaders in all our religions embraced the other and became the greater. Their position was greater. Talk to Dr. Deepika Udugama, who goes through all the human rights, referring to the old gurus who taught and said, look at all these people. They taught Buddhism. But they were different because they said, include everybody. And we talk of human rights. All people are equal. Born human means you're equal. So, young boys go under the skirts of girls, wait at the bottom of steps, and that's a voyeurism, and they're taking pictures. Young girls do that. Young girls do it, and they giggle and laugh. It's a very sick thing that is happening to your children. Doxing, manipulating and publishing information about somebody without their... For instance, you go very privately with your family. for a holiday somewhere and you want some quiet and privacy. Somebody WhatsApps you and then posts it to all their friends, and you don't want that. You want your privacy. We don't have those privacy law in place. So I think security of women, and I have to deal with this, it is called, sometimes Google tells you your children will never have to watch this porn and all these things because we have blocked everything that has the word porn on it. And they boast about it. But there is something, have you seen children do this? Hashtag. When you put the hashtag, you can go into hashtag Instaporn, hashtag sexteens, hashtag naked girls. Go and see, because this is what your children are watching. And nobody dates. Swipe left, Tinder. You have a date. So you don't like the person, swipe left again. And there's a huge culture of violence. And now they are saying, you can report the person who did the violence. You can imagine a woman, for example, X goes out with Y, and the woman gets, he says something very bad to her or is very sexist to her. She doesn't like him, and she reports it on the web. He knows where she lives. He knows who she is. What happens? Escalation of the violence against her. So somehow Google and the internet owners don't seem to understand the cycle of violence and what is happening. Sometimes your children are using emojis. They use the brinjal with the little drops of water, and all this goes into the porn sites for children, right? Then again, geotagging. This is a very important thing, because you see, geotagging is embedded in location information. How many times have you put your phone on and they say, go to location, we need your location, we need your contacts. They are invading your privacy. And can you see the people around you who are watching you? They know where you are. Your child. Identity is known. So be careful. I can't go too much into this because of my time. So this is, I've showed you what Snapchat is about and how they say switch on the geotag it by switching on the location. So I also want to talk to you about 2 minutes for you see, we have the surface web, the deep web, and the dark web. Now, the surface web is what you and I are using the normal browsers and working on, no problem. The deep web is where all the banking records, the medical records are kept. The dark web is where children are sold and bought, where pornography is encouraged, pedophilia is encouraged. Now let me tell you something about the people who sell drugs. Police officer, why is it so difficult now to catch the location of drugs? It was easy those days. You listened in on the phone, you spied on their conversations, you put a bug in their car and you followed them. You know how they do it now? You open the email, right? Is everybody listening to this? Right? You open the email. Your email has a draft box, right? So you take your email and you give a message. Pick up at such and such a place. You don't send it over the IP address or the MAC address. You don't send it through the dynamic or the static lines. You just give the password to that person. That person opens it in his country, and the message to the drug person is contained in the draft box. So it's difficult, getting more and more difficult to get it. There's something else also about the dark web. You know, sometimes parents tell their children, don't touch this, I'm knocking off your browser. You know what they do? Or when there is a problem about, sometimes when there are riots in a country, the government says, we are cutting off Facebook and internet because you're doing so much of hate speech on it. And sometimes rightly so. You need to do that because of the hate speech on it. It has to be proportionate, but it is rightly so. You know what they do? All the children immediately go through VPN. What is VPN? What is VPN? I have maybe 200 people. What is VPN? Virtual private network. What is special about the virtual private network? It operates only through the dark web. And it uses the Tor. They don't use the browser, Chrome, and all these things. They use Tor, which is the onion router. And what does onion router do? It takes it, disperses into 100 fragments, goes all over the place, and comes out with the message. So we can't track IP addresses. We can't do it unless special apps are there. They're developing. The moment you develop it, they develop one better. So this is another thing that is happening. Be careful how your children are using these browsers. Virtual private network is a very dangerous thing because you're introducing them to the dark web. Because then the dark web can survey your children's conversation. So the virtual private network, what it does is, you're talking from Sri Lanka, but it imitates that you're talking, say, from Australia, or you're talking from Paris. So this is a problem. How many minutes more? One more thing, there's a red room in the deep website, in the dark web, there is a thing called the red room, where children, men and women are tortured and killed, and people pay to watch it. And they check in, they click in, and they pay to watch it. So what happened in the Koala thing was, because they were surveilling people who checked in, they caught not only the perpetrator, they caught 2,800 people who were coming in. They pay big money. So only those who bid the highest can watch the child or the man or the woman getting killed. It's called the red room. Go home and read it. So I can't take all these things with you, but I just want to show you one thing more. Something very serious. If they can see your CCTV. And I encourage every one of you to go home, to take your laptops. And there is called a laptop shutter. If you don't have that, put a little black tape on it. When you're doing Skype, there's a camera there. Put a little black tape on it. Because if not, they can hack into everything you're doing in your room. They know your movements, they can geotag you, and they know what's happening. And then you're very vulnerable, right? So the idea is this, and I don't want you to go home and tell your children, please give me I'm never giving you a smartphone again. My goodness, Mrs. Tilakawardane told me how dangerous it is, and that all of y'all are watching porn. Don't do that. You know why? You're making that child marginalized in an extremely difficult competitive environment. So what you have to do is teach, train, bring them awareness, tell them the dangers of having sex at the age of 8 and 9. Tell them that what you're watching on porn is not the reality. It is a perverted thing. Because the language you use objectifies women. The girls look at it and think, oh, it's perfectly all right if I'm called by these horrible names, because that's the modern way I am. The boys look at it and say, oh my goodness, I can't do this. They get terrible inferiority complex. It's all false. We know that, but they don't. So we need to teach them. We need to tell them what is right and what is wrong. And even in Victoria Police, they are teaching little children to say penis and vagina, and tell them that is your most safeguarded thing you should have. Please go to your nearest school. Please take the flower example. Talk to them and say, protect. If anybody touches you, you scream. You know what? Child abuse will stop. Child abuse will stop because it is the worst thing that can happen. Domestic violence. Your home is the only place where a woman would feel safe, where a child would feel safe. And because of the power dynamics, those who have more power, who therefore are more accountable for that power, they abuse that power. And they harm not just physically, mentally, emotionally, and there is a cartoon called Peppa the Pig. If your grandmothers and grandfathers, you will give put the child to sleep. Very few people have domestic aids today. So you'll put the Peppa the Pig and say, now baby, because it is
This morning, there are
Google
growing concerns from customers around the country that hackers are increasingly breaking into their Ring home security cameras, using the popular devices to spy on,
I can see you the best. Come on, wake the up.
Taunt,
And it goes like
and even extort residents. Listen to this.
Pay this 50 Bitcoin ransom or else you will get terminated yourself right now.
That's the voice of an alleged hacker who gained access to Tanya Amador's camera in Texas.
It was coming from the camera. It really catches you off guard.
Other disturbing videos have surfaced this week. In Florida, an alleged hacker directing racist comments at this Ring owner.
So did your child come out black or like kind of like light skin? I don't know. What?
Watch as this 8-year-old girl in Mississippi searches her room for an invisible intruder.
I'm your best friend. I'm Santa Claus.
Experts say this is part of a larger security crisis affecting the ever-growing market for smart home devices connected to the internet, like doorbells and hidden cameras.
So Bitcoins is worth 1,477,692.21. Whom will you abuse? Whom will you rape? Whom will you destroy? To produce a video and put it on the porn websites, on the pedophilic websites, to make so much money. See, that is why we have to know that money really is not the answer to everything. The security of our child, the future of yours and my child is the most important. And loving a child sometimes has to be tough love. So then I have a few more things to talk about the digital women, and it's very important. You see, now I'm going to stop with this, and I promise you it's going to be the last thing. But it's important to know, and this is really very much for the women. You see, now we are having artificial intelligence, and we are very thrilled. You know, we are saying, oh, we are not going to get discriminated at interviews, because men will say, oh, you're a woman, are you going to get pregnant? And they discriminate. That's the women's talk, right? That won't happen, because we have an artificial intelligence robot who's going to sit there and be human rights head, right? That is recruitment of people. So you take the list of people who come in, and you're now trying to put in all the data into this. You know how you have to put things in, you make typing mistakes and everything. So you're typing in Joanna, and it says, you mean John. You know Siri, how Siri talks? And when you try to talk to Siri, Siri doesn't understand. Take Siri one day and speak to Siri and say, your so-and-so, refer to your husband or your son or anybody in the family, say, he's a terrible person, he's an awful person. Say that. It will never respond to taking a call to that person. So you see, they will say, you will be discriminated. Why? Because STEM, science, technology, economics and mathematics, electronics and mathematics are all done by men. So the people who are feeding in this information today, the courts are rejecting artificial. And I have actually written an article and put it on the UNODC websites. You rob data from a data Cambridge Analytica case. You take that data, which is called data mining, and you're trying to use it to determine who is the accused, who's guilty, and who is not. And again, in America, where they're using, only the blacks are getting convicted. So the putting in of the data is not scrutinized. There's no transparency. And we, the judges, will ratify and say, oh, how nice. We just asked the robot to do this. No. We are transparent. And judging is much more than the fact and the law. It is about empathy. It is about giving a person a second chance when you know the time is right. So I have spoken to you about all of this. If there is time, I will certainly take questions. But please think about it. Think about safety first. Think about knowledge. Think about awareness and sensitivity. And you know, there is so much of media in our country. These are the important things you should be covering. Thank you.